Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to Tech Leaders Hub. Thank you so much for joining us here today for the Tech Leaders Hub Roundtable Tech Leaders versus Uncertainty. I'm your host, Jakub Greizar, hosting this actually for the last time within Tech Leaders Hub. And my guests today are Itai Rosenblatt, engineering manager at Google, Alvaro Moya, CTO and founder of LIDR, and Andrew Beacock, CTO at Guidr.legal. You might recognize these faces. All three of them were previous guests of the show. Itai, Alvaro, Andy, thank you so much for being part of Tech Leaders Hub once again. How are you all doing today?
Doing great, man. Good
Really
to see
good.
you.
Fine here. Yeah, close to the weekend.
And excited for this.
Yes, extremely excited as well. Oh, Lorena is here already with a comment. Super excited to be here. We're excited to have you, Lorena, as well. Thank you for being part of Tech Leaders Hub. All right, everyone. So people are still joining in. We'll give everybody a minute or two to join this roundtable session before we dig into the two main topics today that we're going to cover. So how should tech leaders handle the recession, and how tech leaders should handle the rise of AI. Just a little bit of housekeeping before. Let us know that you can hear us and that you can see us. Leave a comment. We're already getting comments, but I haven't seen a comment yet that would say, we can hear you, we can see you. So we definitely need, additional ones about that. Okay, we're getting quite a few. Excited to join. Thank you to Bolt. I butchered the pronunciation. I'm sorry about that. Alejandro's saying, let's go. Tzad is here with us today as well. Oh, that's quite a few. That's quite a few. I might not be able to feature all of them, but thank you so much for joining. So now, usually within Tech Leaders Hub, I ask the guest initially, who do you hope is tuning in? I thought I would cover that part. I hope that joining in are exactly the people that Tech Leaders Hub has always targeted, and that's tech leaders, people in leadership positions in technological companies, engineering managers, CTOs, VPs of engineering. If you're in that kind of role, this will be useful for you. If you're in a general leadership role within other disciplines like marketing, sales, this will probably still be useful for you. If I know anything about Tech Leaders Hub, and I do, I hosted this show for over 30 episodes, the leadership advice is always, a lot of the time, it's universal. And thank you for the comments about the sound and the video. Awesome, amazing. It's time for us to dig in then. There's quite a few people waiting for us to dig into the content that we have at hand. So first of all, we'll start with a very short round of introductions. You might not be familiar with Itai, Alvaro, and Andy, so I'll ask each of them to say just a few sentences about themselves so you'll know who you're learning from today. And let's start with Andy, perhaps.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. Andrew Beacock. I'm the CTO of Guidr, or Guidr.legal is the website. Been in engineering for 27 years, software developer most of that time, but slowly grown up through the ranks and worked at massive companies, tiny companies, and currently working in the American legal space at a legal tech startup. That's me.
Lovely. How about Alvaro next?
Great. So yeah, my name is Alvaro Moya. Nice to meet you all. I have seen some well-known faces in the highlights like Alex and Frido. So happy to see you here. So for those of you that doesn't know me, I have been CTO for 9 years. And after some problems trying to find the right training for aspiring leaders in my team and being able to delegate effectively, both like team leads and engineering managers, I decided to finally create a program that I wish I had at that time. And this is what I do at LIDR.co. And now with LIDR Academy, we have this content for aspiring leaders to develop the right skills for leading effectively.
Okay, thank you, Alvaro. And how about Itai?
Hi, I'm Itai Rosenblatt. I'm currently an engineering manager at Google and Google Cloud. I've worked in a few big companies like Cisco and Dell, and I worked on a few startups which I founded, and being at Google for the last 2 years.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introductions. So in usual Tech Leaders Hub fashion, we'll get very quickly right to the valuable content that we have prepared for you. And we'll get right into the questions and into the topic. So today's topic is tech leaders versus uncertainty. We'll be focusing on how to deal with the topic of the recession and everything that is related to that, including dealing with layoffs as well. And then we'll move into AI, ChatGPT, but not just that. Just one quick word of housekeeping. If you have questions for our guests, do not hesitate to ask. And we'll do our best to address the questions as you ask them, but please allow us for a few minutes. And I can't promise that all of the questions will be answered, but I just wanted to let you know there won't be a Q&A at the end. The Q&A is continuous, so don't hesitate, and we'll try to make all of this work. It might be a tiny bit messy, but we'll try to make it work. So now then, let's talk about the recession first, and we'll talk about AI second. For the topic of the recession, ever since it started, I think a lot of leaders and teams at a lot of companies are hearing a phrase that has become very familiar right now. Do more with less is the name of the game when resources are scarce and the times are a little bit tougher than they used to be, for example, just a year ago. So the first question, and I would like Itai to take this one first, and Alvaro, Andy, feel free to follow up after Itai. The first question is, what does do more with less mean? What does it mean for you?
All right, thanks, Jakob. So it feels like we had do less with more when we had all the good times in tech, and now we have to do more with less, and we need to accommodate. And it feels like whatever we want to say is pretty clear and pretty obvious, but the challenge is actually practicing it and making sure you live up to the expectations. So when I think about doing more with less, I think about making sure we're doing the right things and we're doing them efficiently. And how do we make sure we do that, right? So just a few things which come to mind. First of all, be crisp on priorities, right? It's easy to not clearly define priorities because it's hard work. And it's easy not to revisit these priorities as you go along and learn more things. But that will allow you to navigate and to places where you don't want to, and will allow you to not focus on the right target. So be crisp on priorities and revisit them commonly. Another thing is shift left mentality. We all know the graph of the price increases significantly, exponentially as you go, as the time progresses. As the earlier you find an issue and address it, it's cheaper to address it. So it's usually like a graph which is used for bugs. When do you find the bug? But this actually also has to do with development processes, right? You want to design first. You want to include your reviewers as early as possible. You want to validate your product as early as possible. Try and shift left as much as possible, and that will allow you to reduce the cost and achieve more. Part of this is actually getting to the market earlier. So try to get to the market as early as possible with an MVP, with a POC, to get customer feedback, to make sure you're barking up the right tree. And last thing is try and be diligent to find collaborations and reusing stuff you've already done, as opposed to the engineering narrative of I can build it myself better. Obviously, everyone here are good engineers and can build it great, but that will be much more costly and will take much more time.
All right. So just as a quick follow-up from my side, can you say a little bit more about prioritization? Over the course of Tech Leaders Hub episodes, it was one of the main challenges that came up. Our CTO survey also showed that it's one of the main challenges for CTOs. Do you have any advice on specifically when prioritizing, how do you decide which topics get to the top, which topics get cut?
Yeah, I think it's a good point, and it obviously has to do with a lot of per project, and it is to be revisited always. But I would say try and prioritize. First of all, get the quick things or the easy things done first, so you'll have a clear vision of your backlog. Because if you're starting with the big things and you have a lot of other tickets, you can never know when you're going to finish. And the other thing is, if you get a lot of things done quickly, that will give you more information and more certainty to prioritize the rest.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for the additional detail here. And with that said, I wanted to open up the floor to Alvaro and Andy. Okay, Alvaro, you're raising your hand. Go first. and we'll
I
see
think,
if Andy has more to add afterwards.
Yep, I have a couple of ideas that complement what Itai was mentioning. So first, after attending some seminars about the future of tech this year, the trends for CIOs, CTOs, especially for big companies, and interviewing myself a lot of people from around Europe, what I have learned is that first, what boards and CEOs are looking for now in our role as technical leaders is more about efficiency, and the efficiency, one of the key ways to get it is through automation, right? It will be related to AI later, but at the end, without AI, we have a lot of tools that already automate parts of the processes and makes them streamlined. So when we say do more with less, for developers, it's about spending more time coding to develop what should be developed according to those priorities. And that means not documenting or not linking documents or not doing or explaining one-to-one if you can group them with a video using Loom or using other tools, for example. And the other topics, when you need to prioritize, what I see coming from boards and CEOs is like, you need to focus on what is already working. So unfortunately, in these times of recession and uncertainty, the certain things that is what is working and making money for the company, right? So unfortunately, R&D is normally affected. Again, no learning time, no budget for learning, because you want developers, again, to be developing as much as possible. This is counterintuitive for me, counterproductive in the long term, but I can really understand a CEO that is really slashing everything that is not about developing the main feature that is related to the main product right now and removing everything else.
Yeah,
so
I think just
from what you're... Sorry, Andy, go.
Yeah, I was just kind of to build on that as well, I think, and picking up on something that Itai said, is sort of if you've got a good connection as well between your product team and the engineering team, and you've got a good feedback cycle there, then it gives you an opportunity as well to really understand what those priorities are that are going to drive the business and the company forward, rather than more of the R&D side. Plus, if you can then optimize your current processes and make your current system better, that actually then frees up a bit of time when the R&D budgets do come back, that actually you've then got a bit of space, you've sort of streamlined your operations, you've made your product better and more compatible with the future innovations as well. So it's actually can be quite a good time to just get the current product really solidified and really nailed on, rather than just constantly building new things.
Right. I really resonate with that, because I feel like within times like these, often the knee-jerk reaction is, okay, let's do something big and bold and loud, a big change that will help us stand out and get us a lot of attention, where honestly, sometimes it's about the fundamentals. And this resonates with me, even though I'm not in an engineering position, and I always emphasize this, right? But there's, from the marketing perspective, there's content that's out there right now, could be updated. From the engineering side, there are features live right now that are frustrating users and could be delighting the users, and that is bound to make a difference. And I wanted to follow up on one thing that Alvaro said. So the feeling that I got from what you were saying right now is that there might be I don't want to call it a temptation, but there might be an impulse to have the developers focus on actually developing the features, maybe putting documentation, a little bit further, and not focusing on it as much. But the way I read this, and I wanted to tell me if I'm correct, is it a kind of temporary solution, in the sense that you can push your developers to just develop for a limited amount of time, to focus on that, but after that, you're basically accruing tech debt, and you'll have to pay that off later?
May I go with that?
Yeah, that's actually for you.
So the thing is that sometimes this is not communicated. So it's just about, okay, adapting to the new situation, but then you are not maybe stating correctly that it's going to be a temporary situation, right? So when expectations are not clear, you can really burn the people. You can really make them unclear about if the situation will go back to normal or not. And that's why, for me, one of the key topics to deal with when in these uncertain moments, or in any situation where the context is changing and it's affecting, is about being very, very clear, being transparent with what is going on, and over communicate, especially in remote teams. That's key. It seems like a silly thing, but it's about talking to each other much more to keep people calm, to let them have a voice, to answer the questions openly and don't hide, because at the end the reality is going to be there, and you prefer to be the one telling them what is going to happen or what is going on rather than the media, right? So at the end, it's important to over communicate, and as well showing adaptability yourself. You need to be the first showing how to navigate the new waves, right? Otherwise, they are going to panic much more than you, right? So if you show them that you are afraid of the things that are happening, you are in a negative mood, you are really complaining about the things are coming from business, and it's always like they are telling us to do that, you are breaking the company. You are making your team work in silo, being against the whole company. And don't forget that you are all pursuing the same goal, the same milestones, which is making more money for the business, right? So if you put your team against your company and your business, you are going to lose the battle, right? So I think those two topics, clarity, communication, and on the other side, adaptability, it's really, really important. And finally, upskilling for this new situation if they are not ready. Again, for me, I said it was counterintuitive to leave training, but at the same time, it's one of the biggest return on investments in the company. So the more your team learns about new processes, about new tools, etc., the faster they are going to adapt, and the faster you are going to build a competitive advantage in the market, while the rest of the companies, again, are just getting to the seat, like not moving because the bad times will pass, right? So it's the moment to really make the difference, and that's why for me it was counterintuitive.
I agree that it's a really make or break time for leaders, and it's a difficult balance, isn't it? On the one hand, you want to stay empathetic when times are difficult. Maybe, there was a round of layoffs at the company, and, you need to respect that. On the other, the team will be looking up to you to set an emotional example. And if you come if you're dejected, if you start emphasizing those silos of they want something from us, basically using us versus them language, that can only lead to problems. So thank you for adding that to the discussion, Alvaro. And we have actually 2 questions coming in. And the first one is from Frito, so we'll answer that one first, and we'll then check the next one if it fits. So the one from Frito goes like this. And thank you, Frito, by the way, for contributing the question. Isn't prioritization actually a euphemism for doing less with less? Itai, maybe you want to take that one.
Sure, I can start. So first of all, I think that doing more is not necessarily doing more things, but doing more impact or getting more impact to the customer and to your company. So when you're not in the mentality of doing more with less, you can just do things which are not their ROI isn't very high. So doing more is actually focusing on the things with the highest ROI. Second of all, prioritization doesn't mean that you leave aside the things with low priority. It just means where do you start from, and you start with the things which bring high value with short effort, and also bring clarity for the rest of the things you have. And then you might decide to do other things or more things, or it might even make you understand that what you thought you need to do is actually something that the market doesn't really need. So that's why you want to focus on the high ROI and high impact things.
All right, thanks for the answer. Alvaro, Andy, do you have anything to add on top of that?
Andy, go ahead if you want.
Okay, let's
No,
go ahead.
I haven't got anything to add, to be honest. That was a great answer.
Okay, thank you. So just to address what's happening in the comments, Hannah, I saw your comment, I read it. It is not exactly a question. So anybody who's on LinkedIn is welcome to read what you added there to the discussion, but we're going to move on. Now, the next big point that I wanted to touch upon is motivation. Definitely, this is a difficult time to keep teams motivated, and I feel like different companies that are at a different point in this recession cycle. Some might still be, if I'm honest, in denial that that it's not going to affect them. Others might be already at the point where layoffs are on the horizon, or layoffs already happened, or it's a little bit after them, and they're picking up the pieces. I wanted to ask about how to handle this situation. How do you keep people motivated during uncertainty? And I latched onto the topic of layoffs, but generally speaking, we don't know what is going to happen with the global market coming up. And I wanted to ask, Alvaro, I think you already added a little bit to that point. Would you like to expand on it? Should we go on to another speaker?
No, I think those points also touch really on motivation. If they are not clear about the journey the company is taking, if they see the strategy is changing as well as the times, it's like they are not going to have the safety and the trust in the leaders, that they really have a strong vision and they just adapt to the times, but the vision is the same, right? So I would say again, clarity, keep having learning and development opportunities and these kind of challenges for them to keep growing. It's important. And then with this over communication and transparency, making them sure that their job is safe, if it's the case, or if something is coming, be the first to tell them. But I would say I prefer Andy or Itai to take the mic.
That's excellent. I just wanted to emphasize that one. If something is coming, be the first to tell them. That's a great rule to follow. How about Andy? Do you want to add on top of that?
Yeah, sure. I think, in uncertain times, you can't really be uncertain yourself. And, as a leader and a member of like a C-suite or a member of the leadership of the company, you need to all know where you're going. Now, it might be that actually you don't know exactly what the next 6 to 12 months are going to play out like, but give people some certainty around their role and their position. If you are sort of focusing down on more core product stuff, make that very clear. Lay out a strategy. Basically, everyone will follow a leader who lays out a journey. What they don't want is somebody with a load of maps and a compass, not knowing where they're going, floundering around. It puts people in an uncertain feeling. And in sort of uncertain times and with layoffs and stuff, you don't want to lose good people because they feel that you don't actually have a strategy for how you're going to kind of weather the storm and get through it. So figure out what's an appropriate plan, share that with people, ask for feedback, get people involved so that they feel that they're also part of the decision-making process on how you kind of keep moving forward in uncertain times.
Do you have any tactical advice on how to involve people in these types of decisions? Is it town hall meetings? Is it some sort of async communication? Is there anything that you've seen work?
Yeah, I mean, we do actually at Guidr, we hold monthly town halls where basically people can come forward with questions. Part of that, we also use Zoom's whiteboard feature so that people can kind of anonymously post questions, because sometimes someone wants to ask maybe a question about salary reviews or possible layoffs, and they don't necessarily want to have their name against it. So some kind of anonymous way for people to ask questions is quite a good way to get that feedback. And then also, putting forward proposals for a future roadmap or strategy, and then asking for feedback as well. Just get people involved, and whether that's at a department level, depending on the size of the org. I mean, Guidr is quite small, so we kind of do it as a whole company. But if you work for a larger company, do it at an org level or even a department level, depending. But just try and share the vision, share the direction you think is appropriate, and request for feedback. But at any point, basically say, yes, we've thought out a plan. What do you think?
Yeah. And what really stuck with me is, in uncertain times, you can't be uncertain yourself. That's something I'll be saving in my brain from this conversations. So, Pablo, we are taking questions from YouTube, and I do see your question. I wanted to ask Itai to add on top of the subject of motivation, this big point we're tackling, and then we'll get to your question next.
Yeah, so Alvaro and Andrew had some great points, and I think that especially in these times, we have to be very active in our leadership. So we need to acknowledge the uncertainty, not shy away from it, and not let the hallway discussions to grow. So acknowledge it, face on. But while acknowledging this, also trying to focus on the certain things that we do know, because even in uncertain times, there are things we know. As to Andrew's point, we are mapping a way forward, right? So there are things we know, and due to that, we chose this specific route. So let's focus on that and show them how this route might lead us out of this uncertainty, and also focus on wins, because when you have uncertain times, it's very easy to like go mellow and sink. And if you focus on the team wins and celebrate them more, and have more quick and small wins, that will help boost morale and get the wheel going.
Right. Yeah. I think this focusing on wins and taking a moment to celebrate wins, it sometimes gets a bad rap, right? And there is a way to do it that feels artificial, but I think space should still be left for it. Some people are going to feel cynical about it, and you can't avoid that, but others will really appreciate it. Okay, so maybe 2 more words about this from Andy, and then we'll get to Pablo's question.
Yeah, just to pick up on that idea about sort of wins and public wins. I mean, one of the things that we do at Guidr as the engineering team, and we're a small team, is once a month we have like a demo session where we show the latest features that we've built to the rest of the company. But we also have a little slide deck of sort of the features we've built, platform improvements, but then we also have a slide about personal stuff. If someone's been on vacation, we include a photo and say where they've been, or if there's something important going on in someone's life, we include a slide of like what we've been getting up to. And it's not necessarily making a big celebration of all of this part, but it's just kind of saying, we've done a lot of work this month. What do you think? And these demo sessions go down really well, and the slides, the kind of the slide, a lot of appreciation and a lot of good feedback. So you don't.
Thank you.
You don't have to have it sort of a sort of cheesy come and get a certificate on a stage type win. It can be lower key than that.
Yeah, I like that, and that's nice and tactical. It's really, I think, appropriate. Right. So we've got Pablo waiting. I thought, Andy, maybe you'll start with the question. Okay, I need to feature the question first. This is getting turned into a podcast episode, so we need to read the questions out loud. I should follow my own rules. Okay. So Pablo first says, "I don't know if YouTube questions are read. You've got your answer right here, and the question is, I would like to ask about how to combat loneliness as a leader. That is a particular key point that sometimes leaders have to deal with." So, Andy, go.
Yeah, and I mean, I have actually personally felt this. My sort of last 3 roles have been up sort of at the engineering manager, engineering lead, CTO type level, where you are very much on your own. Unless you're in a very large company, you're normally like the key person at that position. You don't often have any peers. What I did was basically reach out to find meetups, webinars like this, but basically find groups of CTOs and engineering managers where they're meeting. There's a great group called Craft CTO. There's a bunch of meetups in the UK for this. And I used that as my kind of like team of fellow CTOs. And then also I'm very fortunate that I live not too far from Manchester in the UK, which has got a great sort of tech scene. And so I know a bunch of CTOs there. So when I travel into Manchester, I meet up with them for a coffee or lunch, run through some problems I'm having. And you just got to try and find people around you who are in the same position. Normally, if you come from an individual contributor basis, you've often had fellow engineers that you would, share your problems with, but you get to a certain level, you're the only person in the company at that level. So you have to find other people outside of it. But that's how I do it. That's how I've managed to do it.
All right. Thank you so much for adding that in. And actually, Itai, this really reminds me of what we mentioned during our Tech Leaders Hub session one-on-one. So I thought you might, reiterate a little bit of what you said there, because it was a very memorable session, actually.
Yeah, I think that Andy made great points. I think that we also discussed some of those in that session. I think that finding that support group is super important, since you can't rely on your peers, because sometimes the people you're working with, as Andy mentioned, you can't really be forthcoming with them or be very open or rely on them, because you can't really open up. And Andy's points are great. You can find their groups probably on Facebook or meetups, whatever, in every country. We can, or if it's a bigger company, we're organizing like roundtables at Google, in which leaders from various levels and different organizations, we try to mix and match people from different organizations so they can share and vent without people knowing each other closely. And finding a work spouse was, I think, one of the tips we gave last time, right? Find someone in the workplace who is familiar enough with your work so they have context, but is still distant enough that you know that they have your back and they don't have any hidden agenda.
Yeah. And I have to say, this is one of the tips from Tech Leaders Hub that I really applied in my own leadership as well. I found a work spouse. It was great. And later this afternoon, I am meeting with a group of marketers, that I actually really enjoyed working with along my career path, and we're going to brainstorm and help each other out. So thank you for adding that. It really works, is what I'm trying to say here. And another thing that's really useful. So Pablo, thanks for the question. And by the way, Pablo says, thanks for the answer. Ivo, we're getting to your question next. And thank you so much, everyone, for the engagement. This is great. But before that, Lorena mentioned something called the leader community, and I wonder if we have anybody here who could comment on that. Alvaro?
Yeah, actually, I was clear about building a training program, but the reality is that I didn't build it from the beginning. What I built was a community because I was feeling alone myself, and I wanted to have this support network that is so needed in this lonely place, which is leadership. The more the upper you are, the more difficult, and that's why from the very beginning we created a community and we co-created the program with them. So asking the people, what are you missing in your engineering managers, was the best way for me to build the product. So it's not only that you will feel not alone, it's also that this community can help you create the products of your company as well, right? So definitely I was willing to create that for the local communities here in Spain and in Europe. I was following as well the advice and the way Andy was creating it in the UK with CTO Craft. So right now we have the biggest CTOs community in Spain with more than 1,900 members, I would say. So
amazing.
It's local, but it's also virtual. After the pandemic, we moved to virtual, and it's about getting free bands, getting movement, right? Getting spaces for them to just network or maybe learning about the topic and have an excuse to meet together. But the reality is that we need that. We need to know that our problems is not our problems. Other people are feeling the same, and remove that imposter syndrome, because even when we are not perfect or we are novices or beginners, what you are facing, we are all facing it in the first time. And as soon as you find someone that has been there at least once, it's already someone that can help you, can mentor you. So that's my piece of advice at the end about the community. That's why I built it at the beginning.
It's a huge unlock for any leader, any professional really, to find somebody who faced a very, very similar challenge and overcame it. It can help so much and save you so much time and frustration. Very well. So thank you for adding that in. Michał, I see your question and I can't guarantee that we'll get to it. The agenda is kind of catching up to us. We're yet to even touch upon AI. So I'll do my best, but I don't guarantee it. Meanwhile, there's a question from Ivo that's been waiting for 8 minutes. Let's try and address it. So Ivo is asking, as a manager, how can you help your team when leadership is not clear and transparent? I love that question. It's actually, there's upper leadership, and then there's you as a manager, and you're not always getting good input. So let's go with the person maybe who's at the largest company. Itai, what do you think about this question?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for the question. This really ties to, first of all, what I said before and what's actually happened lately in Google and other big companies. So I think that it will usually be the case where management doesn't always give you the information you need for full context. I mean, we need to take this as part of the game. And I think that this is actually a better situation than them telling you and asking you not to tell your team. So the fact that you don't know as well is actually a plus, because then you and your team are in the same boat, right? So you can tell your team, hey, I don't have any information as well. We're in this together. Once I know something, I'll promise I'll share with you. So no need for rumors, no need to try and ask around. Whenever something is clear and open, I'll share it with you. In the meantime, let's focus on what we know and what we can do and how we can impact the team. And this is exactly what we've done in our team.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody want to add anything on top of that?
the only thing is about don't shy away. At the end, if leadership is not clear, not all the things are under your control. As a CTO or as an engineering manager, you are in the middle of two worlds, your team and your company. And sometimes they are not even clear, but that doesn't blur your responsibility to ask and try to get as much information as you can get and expose the risk of not having that clarity for your team. Now that you are here listening to us, know that is a risk, is a real risk. You can have many examples of this situation where the bomb exploded because you were shying away or you were not explaining things clearly. Your responsibility is to ask for it, communicate the team that you are doing your best, and communicate so the expectations are clear that you cannot guarantee results. You can see that there is not this clarity also for you, and you will try your best, and that's it. Is your best. You cannot do magic then.
Exactly. Okay, so I wanted to add on top of that something that I heard actually in a meeting yesterday that really fits here. I think as a manager in this type of situation, it's important. It's basically mirroring what you said, Alvaro. It's important to be proactive, to reach out to leadership again and again. Try and get that information from whoever you can, because, and this is the thing that I heard at the meeting yesterday that really stuck with me, aggressively waiting is not a strategy. So keep that in mind if you're in this sort of position, would be my humble contribution to this question. And thank you, Ivo, very much for asking it. Very well. So like I mentioned, the agenda is really catching up to us. One last question about the recession topic. We'll try to cover it fairly quickly, and then we'll leave the last 20 minutes or so for the AI topic, which I'm sure a lot of you are keen to hear about. Michał, I'm sorry to say this means we'll have to skip your question. Very, very sorry about that. So about the recession, the third big topic, and I would like, Andy, you to take this, is hiring in a recession. Obviously, sometimes it's going to happen. And I wanted to ask about your thoughts on hiring in a recession. Is it a good time to hire? If it is, then why? How to do it right? How does it affect the way you actually handle the process, handle the interviews, what you say during the interviews? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, when you are in a recession, do you have the budget to hire? And are you at a point where hiring makes sense? Because, you're obviously, any new person that you bring on board is a significant cost and also a significant amount of training required to get them up to speed. Can you afford that at that moment in time? If the answer is yes, actually, with some of the layoffs going on, with some of the companies like shutting down or closing or really streamlining their operations, there can actually be significantly good talent in the market looking for a new role, compared to when times are more buoyant and all the good people have been sort of absorbed into companies. So there's the potential that actually there's some very, very good candidates out there right now looking for roles because they've been laid off through no fault of their own. Within one thing that I've sort of found quite successful, especially when you are sort of a smaller company trying to be a bit established, is by promoting your own personal brand, which reflects on the company. By doing events like this, by blogging and putting stuff out on LinkedIn, starts to attract people. You start to attract a following, and then at that point, if you've then got a position, even people within companies who have a job already might be like, you know what, I quite like how Alvaro leads his company. I think I'd like to be part of his team. And just by building that out, you can kind of strengthen your own position in hiring and getting people to kind of come on board. It's tricky. I mean, again, recession, you might be able to save a few pounds, dollars, whatever currency, because times are a bit harder, and you're not fighting against like 20 different offers. But good candidates will be able to find a role, and be able to find a good role even when it's in a recession. I know somebody quite recently was basically threatened with redundancy and started applying around and ended up with 8 different interviews within a week because she was that good. And then when the company changed their mind, she went, well, I don't want to work for you because you threatened me with redundancy, and she's moved on to great things. So even there are great candidates out there, you've just got to try and find them, and trying to attract them to your company and your brand before you need to hire, I always think is a good strategy.
Thank you. Yeah, and I wish everybody a story like that with these 8 interviews. Awesome. And I think the subject of personal brand, I mean, obviously this is part of why smart people like you are taking part in events like this. This is the second thing that we're mentioning today that is in this crucial, Eisenhower matrix, important but not urgent category. It will pay off if you stick to it, if you find dedicated time for it, but it never feels urgent. It never feels like you have to post on LinkedIn, or you have to, the second thing being, meet with a support group, but it pays dividends. So it bears repeating on Tech Leaders Hub and other shows. It bears repeating. Pay attention to those things. So now, on the subject of hiring in a recession, I wanted to ask Alvaro, Itai, if you have something to add here. If not, we'll move on to the subject of AI.
Yeah. Thanks, Andy, for clarifying the topic, because you have been very concise on how to make it work for you in this moment, right? One thing for me to just confirm it is that the personal brand, the employer brand you reflect when you are wearing your t-shirt in these public events, public affairs, offering your help for free like a mentor in different platforms, etc., builds confidence, builds trust, and you are reflecting which is the kind of engineering culture you have in your team, right? And the other thing that is reflecting the engineering culture is showing that engineering culture, right? So I am a huge fan of this trend right now. It's more of a trend, which is build in public. Your team can build in public. You can show what you are doing. You can show your code in open source if you have time for that. Otherwise, you can record videos, you can record the internal training tutorials that you are using. You can publish it directly, right? In the interview, you can show that part. I never had enough money in my startups, so I needed to find creative ways to attract, especially the senior talent, right? So at the end, what I had in the interview process that other companies didn't have was speed. I was delivering the feedback directly in real time, for example, during the interview, things that I saw that he or she can improve for the next interview in other companies. I was telling him or her directly, live. It's not an email. It's focus on that. Have you remember how you said that? If you are going straight to the point, will improve my experience, right? So you have things when you have money that the big fishes in the pond doesn't have. Basically, they don't have it. So use it to your advantage, and it could be feedback. It could be really showing how is your environment, because you don't care that much about IP. Showing real challenges you have and being open about that. Again, it's transparency, it's clarity, it's communicating, and in this case, to the other side of the company, right? The same rules applies here for me.
I feel very strongly up.
Just to add one tiny little bit there, the presentation of the wins that I talked about before, I basically published those on LinkedIn, pretty much the slide deck on LinkedIn. If there is something that needs to stay confidential, I blur it out, but on the whole, I don't. So we put out exactly what we've built, the platform changes, all those kind of things. I just put it out publicly, and that also helps. People can, as Alvaro said, people can see your engineering process. They can see how you recognize people. They can see what you consider a good thing and a bad thing. So
the mistakes as well, the failures. You are open to share the failures, and this is the kind of culture that the great talents are looking for. They are not looking people that just show the shiny things on the shiny lights of the product and the team. It's about, hey, I want to know how it's really to be there, right? And the more you show, especially about the bad things, the better for them to be clear. And you know that the people that is getting into the funnel, even if they are just 5, they are 5 people that are totally convinced about what you are selling. So just inspiring them to fight for your cause, for your mission, you will get it done.
That's great. And this is exactly the kind of back and forth I was counting on with this roundtable format. Thank you for that. Itai, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that on top of what Andy and Alvaro said, I think that as we saw now, that no company is immune to recession or to cuts. And I think that means that perks and stability are getting now less importance for candidates on where to choose to work. So I think that we should double down on the culture and impact. So the culture, especially in smaller companies, but also in bigger companies, will take more the front in people choosing where to work, as well as the impact they can have. Because as we mentioned before, during these times, sometimes you will double down on the things you know how to do, and therefore sometimes the impact reduces. So if you have very aspirational projects, or you have positions with high impact and your culture is awesome, but maybe you don't have all the perks, but now these two things will have much more importance for the candidates to choose where to work at.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for adding that in. And I just wanted to add a +1 for building in public. I am a huge fan of that. And I think what people don't really appreciate is to broadcast your vision, basically. We are here, but we're on the road to there, and just keep talking about your destination point, and people will come out of the woodwork to help you achieve that. I mean, I've seen it happen, which is why, I have calls, right now I'm marketing manager at STX Next, right? But whenever I have calls one-on-one, I mentioned, I want to be a marketing consultant one day. And I'll bet you one of these people is going to say, actually, there's a bit of consulting you can do here and there, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's extremely important. And if you're on LinkedIn, if you're watching this on LinkedIn, and most of our watchers do, just do a post about it. Just do a post about where you want to end up. It's going to be huge. If you're a leader, even better. Okay, so we talked a lot about the subject of recession. We have just, I think, 10 minutes, counting in the announcements and everything else, to talk about AI. We can do AI in 10 minutes. It's not such a big deal, right? So we have to be a little bit more selective with our content here. But let me start with, and right, there's a question from Juan, but I will, excuse me, Juan, but we did want to touch upon AI as well. And your question is about the previous kind of big topic. If we have time, we'll circle back to it. But for now, I wanted to at least talk a little bit and get Itai, Alvaro, and Andy's thoughts on the subject of AI. So I'm going to ask about, well, there's a lot to unpack in the subject of AI, definitely. And we could talk about ChatGPT and how it is changing the landscape. But let me maybe ask you a more general question, and whichever of you is the most keen can take this one. Other than the risks and the threats associated with AI, which I think are, largely discussed, let's talk about how we can actually use AI to our advantage. And that's the question I actually want to ask you. How can we use AI to our advantage, while not overshadowing the team and, not undermining their skills? I just wanted to ask you how we can actually use this wave to get our companies and ourselves further. How about we go with Itai first for this one?
Sure. So I think as any new technology, we can either see it as a risk or an opportunity, right? So we need to meet it head on and see how we can use it to our advantage. And I think that Alvaro touched on that in the beginning when we talked about doing more with less. So now you have a tool which is able to do a lot of automation for you, or do a lot of mundane work. So focus your people on doing the more creative stuff, more out of the box stuff, while leveraging the ChatGPTs or whatever, Bard, or whatever other tool you have to do the mundane or to do the repetitive tasks you have. And that will also, A, it will allow you to do more. B, it will allow your talent to actually adjust to the new market, because like it or not, this is part of our market now, and it will just grow. And C, it will allow them to grow and have more impact, because they are going to do a lot more stuff which are cutting edge because they're using the latest technology.
I can add some ideas again, as Itai said, at the end, we have the superpower right now of AI to do a lot of work that was hidden before, right? You needed to summarize the topics of a meeting. You needed to highlight, you needed to send it by email. Right now, with some collaborative tools plus AI power, whatever you call it, now this is happening automatically. You just are present in the session, and all the rest of the things that should happen are there, right? You don't even need a note taker, right? So you can be more creative. The people that has to be there, it's only the necessary people. So the others are using their time for the things that only the humans can do. And for a leader, for me, is one role that is irreplaceable by the machine, because coordinating humans, inspiring them, motivating them to do their best work is not something easily replaceable by a machine, right? So the more time you spend doing people things, getting the most out of your team, the better. And right now we have the tools. So what I recommend the people that is here today is just be up to date with these tools, spend some time, even if it's a time for recession, to do what you are supposed to do, prioritizing effectively. Make sure that you allocate some time to find out and try out these new tools, because if you don't try them, you will not unleash the power of them. And at the end, being on the competitive side of your industry is about doing more with less. And right now, you have the ingredients and are right now on the rise, and you are going to find very useful resources like Futurepedia, following some influencers in LinkedIn, in Instagram, or whatever, talking you about which kind of tools you can use and for which purposes, right? So it should be fairly easy for you to spend just 10, 15 minutes every single week, and another half an hour trying just one tool per week or per month, right? In 1 year, your operational tools and your workflows are going to look radically different.
Yeah. And to just add on top of that, before we go to Andy, you really have to be selective with these tools. And again, just from the marketing perspective for 1 minute here, there are certain things that it's being said that AI can do them that it really can't. Like writing long form blogs, that kind of, you have to be really critical of the output of these AI tools. You have to see for yourself, and if you don't have this, high level of taste about code or content or whatever, ask somebody who does. Is this output actually valuable, or am I being tricked here? Because it's easy to get tricked by what the AI is outputting, actually. So just to add that on top, Alvaro?
Yeah, I would say two ingredients here. Being clear about what you want to get out of that. So you need to be clear about which are your workflows, the ones that you are spending the most time with, the ones that you suspect that are easily automated. Write them down, write then the different steps of the flow. And the second one is trying out by yourself to avoid the biases that are in the market promising you the moon, and at the end not doing anything valuable for you. So if you are clear about what you are going, is the first ingredient, and then trying it by yourself.
Right, thank you. Andy, I actually noticed we have 2 comments. Do you mind if we address them before you go?
No, that's fine. You go? Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so I can see it's not a question, right? So I'm just going to read them. David is saying, exactly, AI should hopefully allow us to spend more effort on caregiving tasks, including people management, mentoring, that machines can/should never replace. I do agree with that, personally. And Cesar is saying, I don't agree 100%. Even currently, ChatGPT could be more inspiring than a bad manager. I've seen it used. People are saying, "Be my therapist." Yeah, but that is not a ChatGPT problem. That's a problem of bad management, definitely. Okay, Andy, I kept you waiting. What is your take on AI?
Yeah, I think the key thing with them is to remember that they are tools. And you've already got a lot of tools that you can use, but here's some more, and they can do them in different ways. When the electronic calculator came along, were people saying, hang on a minute, I like adding up in my head. I don't want a machine that can do it. However, it makes it really easy to do great arithmetic, right? Dictionaries and thesauruses, which we don't even use anymore in a paper form, they helped people like stop doing the spelling and thinking about great words. ChatGPT, right? It can write you a really nice template of a blog post or an article. But the key thing, as you said, is check it for authenticity. Make sure it's actually giving the message you want. It can give you a great head start if you're getting stuck. I know someone who uses it to help write job descriptions and job adverts, because obviously it's been able to collect all that information. So it's helping that person get a head start rather than a blank piece of paper. They've now got a templated, fleshed out thing to build forward. We've even used it recently. We were kind of trying out a new email marketing campaign, and we thought maybe if we had a video on the landing page, that would help. So we used an AI tool to actually come up with sort of the AI. We fed it a script. It produced a video with the spoken word. It was rough around the edges. It was enough to prove out that actually, yes, we should probably get a real video done, because actually that's been quite successful. And so we then commissioned an actual proper marketing company to produce a real video for us. But we used the AI tool to kind of do that MVP, or that kind of quick start idea. So the key thing really is to just remember that all of these things are tools, which you can use, and again, as one of the attendees mentioned, it kind of allows you to focus on higher level tasks, whether they're more people focused or whether it's a higher level of thinking you can do, because you're actually getting rid of the more mundane work off your workload.
So to finish the thought about blogs, you're right. It can't write a blog. It can write an outline. And what I found AI the most useful for is, like you mentioned, stimulating your thinking. I won't ask it to write a blog for me, but I have asked it, and I've gotten quite good results from asking, okay, interview me, ask me questions, I'll answer them, and the result is a blog post. I think in that it can be very useful. So, my friends, we've got only 5 minutes left in the session. I thought for just the final quick one, we could name some AI tools if you've seen them used and could be useful. That is something that people can take from the session, Google afterwards, or Bing afterwards, because that's getting more and more popular, right? And then after that, it'll be final announcements, a final word from your host, and that'll be it for the session. So do we want to start with Alvaro, maybe? Do you have any tools to recommend?
Yes. I don't get the name right now, but I think in terms of coding environment, one of the most useful topics is about being able to ask your code or your documentation. So there is a tool that out of a report or a Confluence or a PDF is able to give you a ChatGPT version of that content. So it's tailored to your content. It's not just the generic language processor. It's just tied to your content. This way, a developer can ask any kind of question about the progress of the code, about an issue, about the task, about how your code works, even people out of development, and is going to provide some answers, right? So you are going to save a lot of support time for your internal team because you are going to teach them how to fix easily, right? The documentation is already there.
Okay, I think Alvaro, if I remember our previous conversations, that tool might have been called Chatbase.
A Chatbase, yeah, exactly. Chatbase,
exactly.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I found it super inspiring. From what you told me, it can even take like a small ebook as input, and then you ask it questions about the ebook, and that can be useful for summarization as well. Okay, I'm noticing that we're actually running very rapidly out of time here. So maybe Itai, do you have another one to add on?
Yeah, nothing for work, but what I started, I mean, my kids like hear this around and they're asking me about what is ChatGPT and how you can do that. And I found a tool called Scribble Diffusion, where someone can just scribble a painting with a mouse and then say what it should be, and then the AI will generate a picture out of it. So the kids are playing with it, and it's amazing, and it like involves them in this world and let them see what are the capabilities. So.
Wow, amazing. Okay, I'll admit, I opened it in another tab. I did it, and the result is awesome. Everybody, Scribble Diffusion, okay? That's the name of the tool. Thank you. That's a nice and humorous way to end the session. And my friends, dear watchers and listeners, that's the end of today's roundtable session. Thank you so much for taking part in it. Thank you especially to the watchers and listeners who asked the questions, and everybody who joined, and everybody who's watching the recording. You spend some time with Tech Leaders Hub. That makes us happy, and it makes me personally happy. So now I'm going to ask our guests for some announcements. Anything they want to promote, you should pay attention to it because they were gracious enough to be our guests, and then it'll be the last word from your host. Let's go with Andy. You first.
Yeah, been absolutely fantastic session today. Really enjoyed being part of this. Thank you for inviting me on. Really enjoyed it. And I guess if we have any American listeners, if you want to get any legal documents done online, then you could head over to guidr.legal to take a look. We very recently finished covering all 50 of the states as far as legal documents for wills and healthcare proxies and power of attorneys. So if there is anyone from America, then please get over there. But yeah, thank you so much for letting me be part of this session today.
Thank you, Andy. Alvaro?
Well, I was preparing my banner. So again, I spoke about it before. So for me, LIDR Academy, I think is the main thing I want to promote, given that we launched it a couple of months ago, I would say, and we are still on a very decent price. Every single learning budget, if you still have it, will allow for that. And it's like, okay, given that I cannot write here, just try to navigate here, right? lidr.co/en/academy. Easy.
Right. Thank you for adding that in. And Itai, anything from you?
No, just to say thank you very much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed this session and talking to you guys. And thank you very much to you, especially Jacob. And it's been a pleasure.
It has been a pleasure. You have no idea. I mean, when I initially thought of the session, I was thinking, okay, I want to do my Tech Leaders Hub Avengers event, take 3 previous guests and put them on the show. And I can tell you it was as good as the movie, okay, which is high praise for me because I loved the movie. So thank you so much for attending. So the word from the host. I have some things to handle. Some things to handle kind of, formally speaking. Please subscribe to Tech Leaders Hub. How do you subscribe to Tech Leaders Hub? The best way to do that is to follow STX Next on LinkedIn. There's also techleadershub.com. There you can subscribe to our newsletter, which is being run by Natasha Mikołajczak, who will be our new host of Tech Leaders Hub. More about that in a second. Tech Leaders Hub is also brought to you by STX Next. If you haven't heard about us, we are a software development consulting company. If you have problems with developing your software faster, developing it right, if you want to do machine learning, have better UX, any sort of technological issue, we can help you resolve. And we've attracted some of the best talent in Poland and outside of Poland as well to help you do that. stxnext.com. We do a lot more than I'm able to fit in such a short pitch. Next up, we are still running the CTO survey. So go to thectosurvey.com if you're a CTO or a similar top-level engineering position and leave your answer to the survey. And the report from the survey should be coming in 2-3 months' time as we compile the results from the survey. So thank you so much for doing that. Also, I wanted to let you know that a big piece of content from STX Next is coming out next week. On Monday, we are planning to publish Python Tech Radar. Python Tech Radar is our largest and best piece of content when it comes to Python. We'll have specialist articles. One of them is going to be by Łukasz Langa from the Python Software Foundation about the state and future of Python. If you want to learn about that, we will have expert articles in Python Tech Radar, as well as our very own survey. Yes, we did another survey. So it's going to be about where Python is heading next. What about GIL? What about performance? What about machine learning? It's all in Python Tech Radar. Look forward to seeing that on Monday on STX Next channels. Finally, last but not least, I don't know if all of you are aware, but this is actually my last session hosting Tech Leaders Hub. I wanted to thank all of you, the guests here on the show, previous guests if you're watching, and everybody else who was instrumental to setting up Tech Leaders Hub. I wanted to do a special shout out to Justyna Dados, to Lukas Gmys, and to Daniel Kościelski. Without them, it would not be possible to actually start this project back in 2020. So thank you so much for that, for the first guest and for everybody else along the way. It has been my huge honor hosting this show. It was definitely one of the best things I've done in my career thus far. I've never been more satisfied with the project as I have been with Tech Leaders Hub. So I am extremely grateful that I got to do this, and I'm getting just a tiny bit emotional when I speak about this. So if you want to celebrate Tech Leaders Hub together, there's actually one last opportunity to do that with me on Monday. And we have fun here. On Monday, I'm going to be a guest on Tech Leaders Hub. That's the next Tech Leaders Hub session happening on Monday. Natasha, the new host, will be hosting, and I will be sharing my learnings from all of the previous Tech Leaders Hub sessions, summarizing the stuff that was repeated the most, the stuff that stuck the most, and the stuff that I think tech leaders should pay a special attention to. And findings from Itai, Alvaro, Andy, and so many other guests are all going to be included there. So I really invite you to that event. It's happening on Monday. You can find it on the STX Next LinkedIn channel. And I am making this moment last, but I'm sorry to say that's all of the announcements that I have for today. So that'll be it for this session, for me hosting Tech Leaders Hub. Itai, Alvaro, and Andy, I wanted to thank you so much again for saying yes on that LinkedIn chat. It has been an amazing pleasure hosting this. And you watchers and listeners, I hope you'll have a nice rest of the day. I'm going to click end broadcast now. All right. Bye, everyone.
you.
See you on Monday. Bye-bye.
Bye.